What's going on, summoners, and welcome back to another episode of Korean Builds. My name is Kangas, and today I'm going to run you guys through some of the new builds that have surfaced as of patch 10.25. Before we get started though, here's our question of the day. Which class in the game do you think needs more champions? I personally love Wardens. They're cool and they protect their allies, which is great for me as a support, but it doesn't feel like we have too many options for them. Let me know your answers in the comments below. Now, let's get into the video. Beginning with the top lane, we've got a build for CAMILLE. She's one of the most versatile and popular picks right now, so you'll definitely want to learn this new build if you're a top lane main. While Trinity Force remains the most popular purchase, a new standard is beginning to develop on her through Divine Sunderer. This item is designed to help cut through tanks, and with how strong they've proven to be this preseason, anti-tank items are high in demand right now. Let's run through the build. For starters, you're going to run Grasp of the Undying, Shield Bash, Bone Plating, Overgrowth, Magical Footwear, and Biscuit Delivery. The stats are Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and whatever defensive rune you need for your matchup. Remember that since you're not building Trinity Force, you have to take Attack Speed. Without it, you're going to feel slow, and things are not going to go well. If you feel like you need more Attack Speed as a personal choice, take Precision and run Legend Alacrity alongside an accessory rune. For items, you'll build Divine Sunderer, Tiamat, defensive boots like plated seal caps, finish the Tiamat by upgrading it to Ravenous Hydra, and then build items like Hysteric's Gauge, Death Stance, Guardian Angel, or Chempunk Chainsword for the anti-heal. And even a Blade of the Ruin King if you need more power to take down tankier foes. With Divine Sunderer and Grasp of the Undying, you have tons of sustain during lane, and if you get that Blade of the Ruin King, you have insane sustain later in the game. Even against squishies, you're going to have plenty of damage and should have no problem doing typical CAMILLE things. This next build is a wild one. Definitely give it some practice before using it in ranked games, or you might get flamed. But our analysts do think that this is not only viable, but pretty good. Prowler's Claw Scion is a new build that's surfacing, and the premise is based on the fact that you can E a minion and then use Prowler's Claw to follow it. Otherwise, it just provides some extra burst damage against champions, and yes, this is another Lethality Scion build. At worst, you get to have some fun. For runes, run Grasp of the Undying, Demolish if you can use it in the matchup, otherwise just take Shield Bash, Conditioning, Overgrowth, Biscuit Delivery, and Approach Velocity. Take Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Situational Defensive Stat runes. For items, you'll build Prowler's Claw, Defensive Boots, Yomu's Ghostblade, Serpent's Fang, Cyrilda's Grudge, and a Sanguine Blade. If you want to commit to early split pushing, build Sanguine Blade third and go for it. While attack speed might not seem optimal on Scion, just a little bit is enough. You're trying to make sure that your attacks come out smoothly, and of course, since you already have such high base damage, attack speed will help you push waves and also last hit. Oh yeah, real quick, I do want you guys to know about our new Wild Rift channel. And if you're interested, make sure to check out the description for a link to it. I'm going to be playing a ton of the new mobile games, so if you are too, definitely check out the channel. Next up, Volibear Top is making his return this patch, so let's run you through the build. For runes, take Press the Attack, Triumph, Legend Tenacity, Last Stand, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. For stats, you'll use Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and whatever defensive rune you need. The important part is the items. You're going to take Rift Maker, Defensive Boots, Gnasher's Tooth if you're ahead, or Demonic Embrace if you need some tank stats. Then whichever one of those you didn't build as your fourth item, and then Zonia's Hourglass and Spirit Visage. Riftmaker is a very powerful item on Volibear, and he's definitely a champion who intends to take long fights. He'll make full use of the true damage buff, and the Omnivamp is absolutely insane on him. Surviving longer allows him to use his W more often, meaning there'll be a cyclical effect providing plenty of sustain. This build overall provides plenty of magic damage and tank stats, so Volibear can lead the charge and act as a juggernaut that cannot be ignored. AP skills into bonus attack speed on Volibear's passive, as well as extra damage on hit, so you're getting a 2-for-1 deal basically. And that'll wrap up the top lane builds. Make sure to take a last look at the screen for a recap of them all. Next up, the junglers. Alright, while this might not seem like a crazy build, we've got one for Shaco. I know. What's unique about this build is it's been slowly but surely evolving. With his new buff to Infinity Edge especially, you'll find that building crit chance is significantly stronger than before. With just 3 crit items, you can maximize the gains from Infinity Edge, and thus, you can throw in a healthy blend of various items to supplement Shaco's playstyle. For runes, run the standard Hail Blades, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Legend Alacrity, and Coup de Grace. For stats, you'll take Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor for your jungle clear. Now for items. You want Duskblade because it's just so good on Shaco. What's even worse than Shaco stealthing, jumping in, and one-shotting the backline is when he gets to stealth after a takedown and create some even more chaotic situations as a result. The Collector, Berserker's Greaves, Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, and a final situational item like Yomu's Ghostblade, Lord Dominic's Regard, Mortal Reminder, or even Guardian Angel are all great options as well. With just the Collector, Infinity Edge, and Essence Reaver, you can hit 60% crit chance and access the bonuses you desire. Essence Reaver is going to be your Spellblade option with this build. As opposed to Trinity Forge last season, you can now build the Spellblade passive while building damage and crit, the stats that you actually want. The Collector is a great addition to this build for the extra crit chance, AD, and of course, the lethality that all AD assassins love to have. Next is a build for Olaf. He's been making his comeback with a good old Gore Drinker mythic item. We all know Olaf. Just when you think you're about to kill him, he heals back up after some insane baits and acting skills. Suddenly, your HP bar is going down faster than his, and we'll stop right there so you don't have to relive the suffering any longer. Anyway, Gore Drinker basically makes that happen times 2. For runes, take Conqueror, Triumph, Legend Alacrity, Last Stand, Magical Footwear, and Approach Velocity. You'll take double Adaptive Force, followed by Armor. Legend Alacrity and Last Stand are 2 key runes here as they synergize so well with Olaf. Attack speed is straightforward, and Olaf gets stronger as he gets lower because of his passive. You're usually going to be fighting near the brink of death, so Last Stand is an easy pickup. For items, build Gore Drinker, Defensive Boots, Steric's Gauge, Black Cleaver, or Death Stance based on what you need, Spirit Visage, and a final defensive item like Guardian Angel. Spirit Visage is absolutely insane on Olaf, so if you have any need for MR, look to build one, as it'll supplement your healing very nicely. That's it for the jungle build, so make sure to take a last look at the screen for a recap of those. Also, if you're looking to improve at arguably the hardest role, jungling, make sure to check out our website, ProGuides.com, where we've got tons of resources and coaches to help you out. Next up, let's talk about the mid lane. AURELION Soul is building Imperial Mandate these days. This has been a thing since last patch, and we're here to talk you guys through it. Since Rylai's Crystal Scepter is a must-buy on AURELION Soul anyway, you can further capitalize on the added slow effect by building Imperial Mandate as well. It's just free. You get your slow with your W, and then allies can proc the Imperial Mandate mark for insane damage. Although the item has gotten some changes this patch, making it much more reliant on having an ally, the price was also decreased. In skirmishes, as well as in the later parts of the game where teamfights break out more often, it'll feel just as strong. For runes, run Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Biscuit Delivery, and Time Warp Tonic. You'll use double Adaptive Force alongside whatever situational defensive rune you need for that lane. For items, build Rylai's Crystal Scepter, Sorc Shoes, Imperial Mandate, Zhonya's Hourglass, Void Staff, and Morellonomicon. A lot of players do build a Magi Soul Stealer, but if you're not overflowing with confidence, you don't need to build one on a soul. Next up is Anivia, who recently received some massive changes. She looks very promising and will run through a build that's emerging for her currently. For runes, run Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Manaflow Band, and Gathering Storm. Take double Adaptive Force and situational defensive runes based on matchup. Anivia is rather mana hungry, and you'll usually build Archangels on her, so running Manaflow is quite important even if you don't get the shield from it like before. Electrocute is also very easy for her to activate when she lands her stun. You'll be able to throw out a surprising amount of burst damage with it. For items, build Liandry's Anguish, Sorc Shoes, Demonic Embrace, Zhonya's Hourglass, Archangel Staff, and Rabadon's Deathcap. Void Staff or Morellonomicon based on what you need. Make sure to purchase tier on your first base so that you can start stacking it as soon as possible. Liandry's is going to be your item of choice in most games because of how well it synergizes with Anivia. She deals plenty of AoE damage and wants longer fights anyway. The burn damage from Liandry's is a natural fit, and when paired with Demonic Embrace, every ability is gonna sting. Ignite is pretty popular in matchups where you have kill pressure, but if you don't, Teleport is still a solid option. Since you scale very well, you can take it slow. Run Teleport to secure more farm and control the pace of games later on. Well, that's gonna cover the mid lane builds, so take another look at the screen for a quick recap of them. Now let's talk about the bottom lane. First, we've got Victor. Victor bottom has been used previously, but it feels much stronger right now because of Imperial Mandate. Some players do build Imperial Mandate on Victor, but that's a player preference and will depend heavily on your lane partner. When laning with Nami specifically, Victor holds a ridiculous amount of power. Since Nami's E empowers abilities as well, Victor can be extremely oppressive with her as his lane partner. For runes, run Arcane Comet, Manaflow Band, Transcendence, Scorch, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter. Use double Adaptive Force and whatever defensive stat you need. For the items, build Luden's Tempest, Sorc Shoes, Lichbane, Rabadon's Deathcap, Zhonya's Hourglass, and either a Void Staff or Morellonomicon for the anti-heal. Since Victor's upgraded W grants his abilities a slow, Imperial Mandate can still work on him in the later stages of the game, as it'll add a ton of damage against targets that he marks. Otherwise, you can throw in a Rylai's somewhere in there early on so you can maximize the effectiveness of the item over the course of the entire game. An example Imperial Mandate build would be Rylai's Crystal Scepter first, followed by Imperial Mandate, Sork Shoes, Lichbane, Rabadon's Deathcap, and either Azoni's Hourglass or Void Staff. Next on the list is XAYAH. Let's quickly run through her runes and items to start. Her runes take Lethal Tempo, Presence of Mind, Legend Bloodline, Coup de Grace, Nimbus Cloak, and Gathering Storm. You'll use Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a Situational Defensive rune. These are pretty standard, but for items we found that Gale Force holds a ton of potential. Build Gale Force, Berserker's Greaves, Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, Navori Quickblades, and Bloodthirster, Mortal Reminder, or Lord Dominic's Regards based on what you need for your game. Gale Force adds a much needed movement option for XAYAH, which is extremely important for her kit. While XAYAH is rather safe because of her ultimate, a lot of her success comes from how effectively she can utilize her E. Since Gale Force allows her to dash, it opens up a ton of possibilities and can allow you to be more creative with how you want to position yourself for when you pull your feathers back. Another reason it's a powerful option is that on top of having your ultimate to avoid danger, you can also use Gale Force to make it even harder for enemies to take you out. With Navori Quickblades, you'll be able to cast your E rather frequently through fights as well, so we're looking at a very different XAYAH as opposed to previous seasons. And yes, I know, we've got another AP champion on the bottom lane with Malzahar. We saw him absolutely take over from the mid lane from the very first day of preseason with Liandry's Torment, and while it was pretty broken back then, it's still good now, and Malzahar still feels like an acceptable pick. He's a viable bot laner with his poke, great lockdown, and because he can somewhat safely push waves with his E and W. For runes, run Summon Aerie, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Gathering Storm, Magical Footwear, and Cosmic Insight. In terms of stats, you'll want double Adaptive Force and a situational defensive rune. The items are Liandry's Torment, Sork Shoes, Demonic Embrace, Rylai's Crystal Scepter, and either Morellonomicon, Zhonya's Hourglass, or Banshee's Veil. This is pretty much what you'd see on mid lane Malzahar, but he still works very effectively in the bottom lane. Especially with another lockdown support, he provides an immense amount of kill pressure, and if a jungler or mid laner roams down, it's game over for his opponents. Make sure that you run Cosmic Insight, as this is probably the most important rune here. If your flash is on a shorter cooldown than your opponent's, you'll be able to create huge advantages anytime you trade flashes with an enemy. There'll come a point where you'll have your flash and ultimate ready, while your opponent will have to sit back helplessly, or risk their lives for every minion they want to farm. Playing mages is a great way to throw off your opponent, and you can learn more about their strengths from a coach on our website. Now we've covered our bot lane picks, so take one last look at the screen for a recap of the builds. Finally, let's conclude with my favorite role, supports. The support section this time around actually features 80 carries. Yeah, that's what it's come to, huh? Marksmen are so weak that they've become the supports. Well, some marksmen are still really strong, and we're joking mostly. First up for supports though is Ashe. Guess which item you want to build on her. If you said Imperial Mandate, give yourself a pat on the back because it's actually broken on her. You can mark enemies with it anytime you slow an enemy, and Ashe's attacks slow from level 1. You don't have to commit to a full AP build, as this item is strong enough to just tech in as an accessory item. For runes, run Arcane Comet, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Scorch, Sheep Shot, and Ultimate Hunter. The stats are double Adaptive Force and a situational defensive rune. For items, build Tier on your first base and then follow it up with Imperial Mandate, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, and then finish up with Mana Mune, and wrap up the build with 2 choices out of Chempunk Chainsword, Black Cleaver, or Ravenous Hydra. Naturally, you'll want Chempunk Chainsword if you need anti-heal, Black Cleaver against tanks, and Ravenous Hydra if you just want more damage and the ability to deal crazy splash damage. Finally, we've alluded to him here and there in our other videos, but let's finally mention that AP Twitch build that everyone is talking about. As a marksman, attack speed is a great stat on Twitch, but he also has some random AP ratios thrown into his kit as well. This season has opened up the doors to some new off-meta builds, and AP Twitch has become an extremely popular pick as a result. While things can be rough early, if Twitch is able to get rolling, this AP variant is actually really powerful. His passive has a reasonable AP ratio on it, and since it deals true damage, you'll be dealing true damage over 6 seconds against opponents. With enough AP, this can get pretty out of hand really quick. Also, his W slow scales with AP, and it can become a rather oppressive obstacle for enemies as a result. For runes, you'll take Hail of Blades, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Presence of Mind, and Legend Alacrity. For stats, take Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a Situal Defensive choice. Next up, we've got to run through the items. Build Gnasher's Tooth, Sork Shoes, the Collector, Night Harvester, and either a Rabadon's Deathcap or Zhonya's Hourglass. While this build kinda goes all over the place, you want to tech in the Collector because of its execution effect. AP Twitch relies on his passive to deal a good amount of his damage, and the Collector's execute works excellently for finishing off enemies that are slowly bleeding out. Of course, since Twitch is able to spread his poison very easily with his ultimate and W, Night Harvester is a great mythic item for him. The movement speed from its effect will allow you to stay safe, and also, you'll be able to deal plenty of damage with it during teamfights. Well, that'll wrap up the support builds, and like always, we put them on the screen for you guys to take one last look at. Well, that'll conclude our Korean builds for patch 10.25. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, so you can receive updates whenever we upload more informative content. We've also got tons of resources to help you improve on our website, so don't be shy, go take a look at ProGuides.com. Also, don't forget to answer our question of the day. In a previous video, we asked, what's the worst play you've seen a teammate make? And Wandering Blade's response was, I was playing draft and the Ahri on our team was hit with a Brand ult during a team fight, and as we tried to separate, dashed into all of us, giving Brand a pentakill. Ouch. I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, as always, best of luck on the Rift, stay hydrated, and wash those hands.